So it appears that there's a back and forth going on between Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, who is a senator, of course, and AOC, who is a House representative in New York's 14th district. Now, what you may recall is, in terms of the origins of this back and forth, Joe Manchin sent out this tweet on November 11th saying, "Defund the police, defund my butt. I'm a proud West Virginia Democrat. We are the party of working men and women. We want to protect Americans' jobs and health care. We do not have some crazy socialist agenda, and we do not believe in defunding the police." And then AOC responded to this tweet with, as you can see, it's like a death stare of hers towards Joe Manchin, and Joe Manchin is clapping. I don't know if it was the Trump "America will never be a socialist nation" comment. I'm not really sure why Joe Manchin was clapping here, but this was also a very, very viral tweet, by the way. And so this is the origin of the back and forth. There's kind of a beef going on now where they're sort of taking shots at each other nonstop. And now what has happened is Manchin has responded. He says, "I guess she put the dagger stare on me. I don't know the young lady. I really don't. I never met her. I'm understanding she's not that active with her bills or in committee. She's more active on Twitter than anything else." So this is a common sort of attack line that's being used against AOC and progressives, is that they're internet celebs, they're e-celebs, all of this stuff. They're not doing stuff when it comes to bills. And this is something that obviously a lot of Democrats are losing their seats right now, and they're trying to blame progressives. But this is an attack line that was also used against Bernie Sanders as well, was that, he didn't get anything done in the Senate. And so you're going to hear this attack line over and over again against progressives. AOC is, one of 15 maybe at that progressives, and really it boils down to like 5 or 6 that are like super progressive who would get anything that she would actually want done. Same thing went for Bernie Sanders. Obviously, he was one senator, but Bernie Sanders was known as the roll call amendment king, which means that he was able to get amendments that were progressive into bills that would have bipartisan support. Now, AOC is obviously one rep. I think when it comes to Congress, I think that when it comes to co-sponsoring and sponsoring, like the numbers between Joe Manchin and AOC are pretty much the same in terms of how many bills have passed that, she sponsored and he had co-sponsored. The numbers are pretty much the same. Joe Manchin is proposing some bipartisan bill on coronavirus relief, which includes a lot of garbage stuff, like corporate liability that exists, basically removing corporate liability during this COVID times, especially for a lot of irrelevant stuff. So basically what Joe Manchin is saying is, I get shitty stuff done. AOC doesn't get anything done. She's just on Twitter. Now, obviously, AOC's sort of voter base, her support base is on Twitter, right? That's the way that she's getting out to people. AOC is, 31? Joe Manchin is 73, right? So that doesn't make any sense. She also just raised $200,000 for COVID relief on a live stream. She's literally basically setting the foundations for the future of the Democratic Party by doing stuff like Twitch streams and stuff like that. This is just the most boomer thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, bro, you're 73 years old. Obviously, that's what you're going to say. But this question always comes up about whether or not, they did something, right? Like whether or not these representatives or senators, these progressives specifically, representatives or senators are doing the sort of, are doing stuff. Like, they're so marginalized, they have to, they're not really able to get anything through that they want, obviously. So it's not really a fair measure. Joe Manchin voted for all of Trump's Supreme Court picks, I believe, and, he voted for, I think, like 20 of 26 of his judges, and he's voted for a lot of garbage stuff. Like, he's done a lot of horrible shit. Why don't you look at the garbage that Joe Manchin is doing? You should be looking at what they're doing rather than whether or not they're passing bills and all this stuff, because it's incredibly difficult to get a bill through. And you're comparing, now finally a sophomore, congresswoman in the House to Joe Manchin. I don't know how long Joe Manchin has been in the Senate, but, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's insane. But AOC responded. She says, "I find it amusing when politicians try to diminish the seriousness of our policy work. movement organizing and grassroots fundraising to, quote, she just tweets as those, quote, serious politics is only done by begging corporate CEOs for money through wax-sealed envelopes delivered by Raven. So this is actually true as well. Basically, she's saying, and this is something that you see a lot when it comes to politicians, like old school politicians like that. We saw it with Christy Smith in California 25, who lost her race. Most of her work on the campaign trail was sitting there eating like, peanut brittle or like those brittle cookies and then just calling donor phones. Like, that's it. That's your campaign. And that is how Congress typically works. And so when you have someone like an AOC or a Bernie Sanders who's actually representing the people, is being really transparent, is being very connected with their, with their constituency, which is what they are, that's something that you should be happy about. That's something that you should actually like. That's something that you should be praising, especially when you're talking about how we have this extremely corrupt system when it comes to money-wise. Politics-wise, obviously everybody knows about the incredible amounts of political corruption that exists. And so when you have somebody who is really trying to stay connected with their constituency, AOC does a lot of work in her district to deliver food during coronavirus and make sure everyone's okay. She puts in a lot of work, obviously. And there's also a lot of movement work that exists there as well. So it's kind of this like sad attempt to minimize all of AOC's work into, quote, she just tweets, is what Joe Manchin is trying to do. But they're really coming from different worlds on this one, honestly. I mean, Joe Manchin is like a 73-year-old dude from West Virginia. You know what I mean? Does he even know what Twitter is? I'm not even sure if he knows what it is. But AOC is a better representative than Joe Manchin is, period. There's no discussion about that. Even if you're a centrist, you should be agreeing with that. But it's going to be interesting to see, I already seen K-Hive, coming around Joe Manchin because, taking down AOC. K-Hive is the most annoying motherfuckers I've ever seen, ever. It's going to be interesting to see where exactly the corporate Democrats come in on this. I've seen a couple of Hillary people defending AOC, so I'm not really sure what is going on here. But, like, imagine thinking you're doing something good by basically, like, punching down on AOC and saying she just tweets when, she just raised $200,000 for coronavirus funding. She, takes care of her district when it comes to coronavirus. And when it comes to bills, man, I mean, she's pressuring, during that whole CARES Act stuff, she was pressuring Congress essentially to, and it was kind of the only one, honestly, at the time to, increase the benefits to people and workers and decrease the bailout for Wall Street. So, she was the one putting all the pressure on these bills. And also, you better watch out now because the Congressional Progressive Caucus is going to be extremely powerful. They've already passed multiple reforms that will actually bring it down so there's organization. So the membership will heavily decrease. But you only need like 13 votes, maybe even less than that. Because the Democratic majority is by like 7 seats or something ridiculous like that, something ridiculously small. So all you need to do essentially is you need to whip the votes and be like, okay, we're going to vote against this. And if you do, then the Democrats have to come to the negotiation table to change their bill. So it's outright false, especially when you look at the numbers in terms of co-sponsoring and sponsoring and whose bills get passed or not. The numbers are virtually the same between Manchin and AOC. In this previous Congress. So it is just absolutely totally false. And this is going to continue. I think AOC's already taken some more shots at Joe Manchin. And I have a feeling that this back and forth is probably going to continue. But, AOC is obviously hands down far and away better than Joe Manchin. It's not even close. Let's be real.